So, when we're talking about the quote by Buckingham and Goodall, uh, when it said, a leader is someone who has followers, plain and simple, I think that is an accurate description. I mean, for in all essence, that is technically true. Um, but at the same time, I think that to an extent, that definition is also not complete. Because yes, a leader is someone with followers, but there is such a thing as a good leader, and a good leader is very different from just a leader with followers. Plus, you oftentimes will have followers, people who are not the leader, but they're the person that everyone looks to for inspiration or for information or something like that. That person who has something that the leader in whatever circumstance doesn't necessarily have. They're a follower, but at the same time they're the follower that everyone really looks to, and to an extent oftentimes the follower that people are actually following. um so that, by Goodall's definition, would sort of make them the leader, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the leader in that situation. I think for me, one of the important things that Goodall and Buckingham are missing is something that we find often in more biblical circles, where we get the understanding of authority. The leader is the person who is given authority, and that authority is granted by something or someone. Now, oftentimes that authority can be granted by the followers, yes, because a follower will give a leader authority. But at the same time, sometimes you have authority granted by a position or by a title or by God. Oftentimes in a church, you have to submit to the authority of the pastor. That pastor, yes, has leaders, but the authority is the more defining factor of that leadership. A follower may have more people looking to them for that information or whatever, but at the same time, that follower must respect the authority of the leader and submit to that. So that follower may have people following them, but if they are not taking authority, if they are submitting their authority, that changes who the leader is. So my correction to the definition would be that a leader is a person who followers submit to the authority of, who has the authority in a situation. Um, because having followers does not necessarily mean that you have authority. You can have people looking to you or following you around or doing what you say or do, but that doesn't necessarily give you the authority in the situation. So I think that's where my concept of distinction goes, is authority is a missing element that is talked a lot about in more religious circles, because the Bible actually talks a lot about who has authority in different situations. So it's something that people talk a little bit about in secular circles, but I think that is the biggest distinction for me when it comes to an authority. And what I look for oftentimes in a leader is someone, personally, I tend to look for people who tend to be charismatic. That is probably just a factor of my personality. I have a very charismatic personality, so I need someone who's able to hold the attention of myself and others. I also tend to look for people who are very intelligent, people who very clearly have a mastery of some sort of understanding, people who know how to work as a team or with a team, who know how to ask questions or understand when they're not the ones who have the right answer all the time, people who can look to somebody else and say, I don't have this answer for you. This person knows what they're talking about in this situation. And the people who can stand in their authority and have confidence, have enough confidence that they can step back and let someone else take control of a situation without losing their ultimate authority. That's something that for me is really compelling. And also, compassion for me is a huge thing in leaders. You have to have compassion for the people around you. And just understand that everyone is not going to be perfect all the time, and you have to have grace for people's flaws. That's a huge thing for leadership for me. I know one of the best leaders I ever had was actually my boss at my old job, and he was so frustrating sometimes because there were elements of like he played accidental favoritism, which falls into the trap of just like high potential versus low potential. He saw people with a lot of potential and kind of fell into the potential trap. But at the same time, he was very even keeled with people. He wouldn't necessarily just like, he would understand if someone who was previously seen as a low potential type person, he would understand if they needed help. He would offer them all the resources they could, and he would really root for you to build yourself up. He had a great business mind and business understanding, but he also knew how to use people's skills to his advantage, which is something that I think is really great in a leader. So when I think of leadership, I often think of my old boss, Paul, because he just really had a lot of things that he looked for. And also, one of the things that he was really compelling about is that he was always learning. That desire to learn more, that understanding that you are never stopped developing, that you are always growing, and that you have to change. You have to learn new things and take that in and change to become better. That's something that I think is really important in a leader, because a leader sets examples. A true leader, a good leader, sets an example for the people around him. They are going to look to that person. They are going to follow that person and mimic them, whether on purpose or by accident. That authority that they're granted will rub off on people. So that's what I look for in a leader. As for learning about Martin Luther King, he's actually kind of the perfect example of what I was talking about. He's someone who I firmly believe God granted authority. Martin Luther King was given his authority for a reason, for his time. And learning about what Goodall and Buckingham said, I really liked when they said that he was a crucible. He created crucibles of situations. He put stakes behind them so that people understood how important it was to move. He didn't just use impassioned language, he used active language that had a specific outcome involved. He also had a really good understanding of how to work a situation. He was able to hold the compassion in people's hearts and really humanize people that were being dehumanized at that time. Um, and I think that he was an amazing leader because he knew everything that it took, and I think the weight of the humanity that he was around, he carried inside of him. You could hear that in a lot of his talks. And even when they were talking about the letters that he wrote from prison, or going and being at a march that he really didn't want to be at, but knowing that he had people who were looking to him for answers. I think that was really beautiful. I personally have actually heard a lot about Winston Churchill and how he was gruff and brash and really out of the box. And he was a wonderful leader. There are good things about many leaders, and there's something to look at in each person. For better or worse, you can look at different leaders and find something that brought them to the place that they were in. I would not suggest replicating all of them. I mean, like I said, Winston Churchill also had a lot of flaws in his personality. So he was the leader that was needed at the time. And I think that for me, ultimately, we can't really control that at all. But as a Christian, as a pastor, as a leader, it is very important to understand that God will bring the person for the situation in the time that they're needed, very much like Esther in the Bible. So that's my views on leadership. So thank you.